As the calendar turns to August, it can only mean one thing. The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So I was waiting all day long for JP Finley to put out this video that he's been claiming he was going to put out of the interview they had with Josh Harris, the owner. Same kind of setup as the one yesterday from Adam Peters. Nothing. So guess we'll get it tomorrow is my guess. I was expecting, the little breakfast scrum with head coach Dan Quinn to show up somewhere. Nothing. So I was going to kind of encompass all of this in one video. And in waiting so long, I just decided to do it live. I did have something else that I wanted to talk about. And let me give a quick shout out to my guy, Frank McLaughlin. Frankie, baby, thank you for the generous dono on CashApp. Really, truly do appreciate you as always, my guy, Frank. Appreciate you, baby. So shout out to the mob. Y'all know what it is. Stand up. We in the building. I was looking at some of the comments from various videos, but the one in particular that I posted over the weekend about 3 things that I would be okay with, 3 things I'm indifferent about, 3 things that I'm not okay with and I wouldn't be okay with respects to the draft. Got a lot of feedback from you guys on that video. Really appreciate the support and your participation. That's what it's all about. And there was one comment that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, and I wanted to talk about it. And then in ripping that comment off of the comment section to talk about it, I run into the Washington Commanders 2024 over/under win total for the upcoming season. And I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that, right? And there was somebody that tweeted me, and I want to just make mention of this tweet real quick. And then I'm going to get to the crux of what I want to discuss tonight. So Will Kavanaugh at Junior Dubs 21. He writes on Twitter, "You hear that coming out of the owners' meetings? ? No. ? That's a good thing. No scandals, no investigations, no controversies. It's quiet. Damn, it feels good." Yeah. That sounds about right. That sums it up. It's very quiet. And I think one of the beat reporters kind of said something similar to that when they asked, I think it was John Keim. I think it was JP Finley that asked Roger Goodell, because he did his union, address, right? State of the Union address of the NFL. And he usually has to answer questions about the Commanders and controversies and lawsuits, scandals. And last year, and maybe even the year before that, ownership questions, sale of the team, that sort of thing. Nothing ever to do with the on-field product or even the stadium, which is probably what most of us care about after the name for a lot of you. For me, the stadium probably trumps the name. I want a new stadium. I don't really know, how long that's going to take, but clearly the logistics of it have to be worked out before we can even kind of figure out what the next move is going to be with that. But, the beat reporter pretty much said, it feels good. And I know Goodell probably feels good about the fact that he doesn't have to answer those questions this time around. So, yeah, it's again, I keep saying this. I know I sound like a broken record, but I said this off season. It's different and it feels different. Wait for it. Wait for it. Because it is different. And I guess that kind of falls in line with why I wanted to come chop it up with you guys tonight. So I got a comment on my last video or over the weekend. The 3 things that I would be okay with, 3 things I was indifferent about, and 3 things that I would be not okay with in terms of the draft for the Commanders. And again, got a lot of feedback from you guys, which was the point of that video, and I appreciate you guys all participating. This was the comment that stuck out to me, and this one was from my guy Calvin Krim. All right, Calvin Krim, 1987. Shout out to Calvin, who is a member of the MOBB. Really appreciate you. He's mob certified, as you can see. So he writes, 1, I'm okay if AP wants to trade any of our core guys from the Ron Rivera era for draft capital. McLaurin, Davis, Payne, Allen. And, what's funny is you say core guys from the Rivera era, and those guys actually precede the Rivera era. But I get your point. Yesterday, Adam Peters already, denounced any rumor of trading Jonathan Allen, and I can't see any of these guys being traded. I wouldn't even put Davis in this group, to be honest with you. It'd just be McLaurin, Payne, and Allen, to be quite frank. But that's another discussion for another day. I personally, and I may be a bit foolish here, and this is a little bit of the fan coming out of me. I told you I want these guys here when this thing turns around. It's just a personal thing. Not everybody's built for the shit that we've gone through the last 5-6 years. And these guys have, been frustrated, especially Jonathan Allen, who is, visibly voiced his frustration. McLaurin, who we saw this year, probably his most frustrating season of his career, barely made it over 1,000 yards. We needed, help from Dallas and a last-second wide receiver screen to get this man 1,000 yards on the season. And literally, that was the only thing that kept me from turning off that Dallas game in Week 18 was, can we get Terry 1,000 yards? I jumped up as if we had just won the game, clinched the division, and knocked Dallas out of the playoffs all at once. You would have thought we just did something monumental when he got to 1,000 yards. Terry's my guy. So is Daron Payne, or Cameron Payne, as one of his teammates recently called him multiple times, or Josh Allen, as one of his teammates recently called him not too long ago. But seriously, all jokes aside, McLaurin, Allen, and Payne and Jeremy Reeves are that core 4 that I want here when things turn around. That's just my preference. But, if they decided they wanted to move one of these guys, and I think this is a conversation not for this year, but I think maybe for next year, depending on how they play. If we see a drop-off from Jonathan Allen, I expect to see massive numbers from these defenders, Allen and Payne in particular, because last year they had no help. Last year there was no scheme. There was, what Joe Witt Jr. said? We're going to make sure we feed our studs. We're going to draw up plays to get these guys some looks that are going to allow them to win. We actually have linebackers behind Jonathan Allen and Cam. And got me calling this man Cam Payne and Daron Payne. We finally have linebackers, real backers behind them that you have to worry about. We actually have a real defensive coordinator, a head coach that's going to scheme up things that will allow them to not be double teamed. 50 to 60, maybe 70% of the game. So no, I don't want to trade these guys, but you said you'd be okay with it. Okay. I can respect that. He says, number 2, I'm indifferent about drafting a defensive lineman. I think there's a lot of talent in the second and third that would be upgrades, but I like where we stand. There are guys that would upgrade our roster significantly. And that kind of goes back to Allen and Payne. If you're not going to trade or move one of those guys, I don't think spending a second or we've done this before, right? Spending a second round pick on a backup defensive tackle, that wasn't smart then. It wouldn't be smart and prudent now. But if you were to trade one of them, then that would make sense, right? But they're not trading one of them. I don't want them to trade one of them because I actually want to see what these guys can do. I think they're actually going into the prime of their careers, you know, especially Payne. I want to see what they can do with a real defensive coordinator and real talent around them. This is the first time we can actually mention the front 7, not the front 4, not the defensive line. The front 7, we can actually say the front 7 is talented. Now let's see what they do with it, right? Number 3, this is the one that I really wanted to talk about. This is the one that stood out to me that I wanted to bring to you guys' attention. And he says, this is a big one for me, but I'm not okay hearing that this is a 6 to 8 win team, especially considering every year when Ron Rivera was coach, it seemed like we were calling for 500 plus predictions for this team every year. 6 top 100 draft picks and the talent we've accumulated, you could argue will be the most talented team on paper in a decade. He's speaking of Commanders teams. If they gel early and we get the quarterback right at 2, with a weak conference and a weaker division than last year, we have a chance at making a deep playoff run. And we finally have the coaching staff to figure it out early. I'll wait till after post-draft cuts, but this could very well be a year more special than what Houston did last year. This last part is very scary. It gets into that territory of, hey, guys, I specifically asked nicely not to get drunk. Now, clearly, Calvin spiked his own drink. He did not spike the entire punch, and I appreciate that. That was one of my small, simple requests, is that you don't spike the entire punch. If you want to get drunk, please, by all means, knock yourself out. But don't contaminate the rest of us. And that just want to have a good time and drink a non-alcoholic beverage as we talk about the Commanders. Don't contaminate the rest of us. We don't want to be inebriated. Clearly, Calvin is drunk. Now, I will say this. I myself have said 5 to 7 wins is what I'm expecting. Okay? 5 to 7 wins. Calvin says he doesn't want to hear 6 to 8. I told you the only way I could get to 6 to 8 is with a strong draft, right? Well, he doesn't even want to hear 6 to 8 wins. Okay? Now, let's break down this, final part of his comment where he says, it seemed like every year we were calling for 500 plus predictions with Ron Rivera. Just the last 2 years. All right. His first year, we didn't expect anything. We went into that season expecting us to be one of the worst teams in football, but it'd be better than what we were the year prior to when he got here. And we were just excited to get rid of Bruce Allen, to be honest with you. And we won 7 games. And we won the division. Didn't expect it? Not sorry? Cool. What followed the next year was fool's gold for most of you. Not for myself. I thought we were going to suck ass because I don't trust Ryan Fitzpatrick. A lot of you fell for that hook, line, and sinker. Good thing is that he put us out of our misery 2 possessions into the game. So you didn't have to worry about it. The 2 years that followed that season, however, there were expectations on my end. I can't speak for you guys, but getting Carson Wentz in 2022, I thought could be a massive upgrade at the most important position. And we were coming off of a season in which we finished the year off like a dud, but COVID was a huge part of that. But we won, 4 in a row to get to 6-6 when we had 5 straight division games. Obviously, that didn't go well, but we felt like, hey, week schedule, right? We were playing the AFC South and the NFC North. Both of those divisions were trash at the time, and everybody in the division except us took advantage, right? And that's why the Giants won 9 games. Both the Cowboys and Eagles won 12 games plus whatever it was. You know the story. And all 3 of them made it to the playoffs. All 3 of them won a playoff game. We didn't. Disappointing, to say the least. Then the next year, I was high on Sam Howell. You guys know that. The defense had made a tremendous leap the year prior. I wasn't sold on the defense, but I did put all my eggs in the Eric Bieniemy basket, as we all know. Didn't go well, clearly, but I thought we could win and win big. And it was the year that Rivera had to win or he was fired. Should have known better by the draft and the things that they were doing. And we talked about how it was kind of nonsensical what they did in the draft, that they weren't prepared to go win 10 games. But that was us just being foolish and having very wishful thinking. That said, he continues 6 top 100 draft picks. True. And the talent we've accumulated, you could argue, will be the most talented team on paper in a decade. I don't know about that. Now, we haven't had, many talented rosters, but if you would have said the last 5 years, sure, absolutely. You might have even been able to go back 7, and that might have been accurate. But you go 10 years back, now you're talking Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Jordan Reed, Jamison Crowder, Kirk Cousins. Yeah, no, we're nowhere near that team from 2015. Even the team the next year after in 16, you could argue was even more talented, even more locked in. Trent Williams was still on the roster then as well. Yeah, no, we're not even close. Now, defensively, there could be an argument, but we had some talented guys. Okay, maybe 1 or 2. D'Angelo Hall and maybe 1 or 2 guys. We didn't have a ton of talent on the team defensively. So I'll grant you that. But still, if we get the quarterback right, which is going to be a huge part of this equation, with a weak conference, is the conference really weak? I think the conference was weaker last year, if we're being honest with one another. The Falcons have gotten better. The Bears are going to be better. The Packers are now better. The Lions have solidified themselves. We'll see. I shouldn't say that. They've established themselves as a legit Super Bowl contender. We'll see if they can follow that up with an encore. The Bucs are now a more confident team, and they feel good about Baker Mayfield. Doesn't mean he's going to follow it up with the season that he had last year. Remember, Baker's never had 2 good seasons in a row, but just going into the year, the Bucs should be better. The Packers should be better. The Bears should be better. The Falcons should be better. I don't think that, and the Cardinals should be better, right? With Kyler Murray healthy, they bought in to Jonathan Gannon. They're going to probably get themselves a top flight receiver. I think the conference as a whole much better than it was last year. It was a ghost town last year. So I beg to differ on the conference being weak or even weaker than it was last year. Now, the division being weaker than last year, that's interesting because there's a lot of distractions in Dallas right now. This doesn't feel like the team last year that legitimately felt like they could make some noise. We'll see. You've got the Eagles coming off of a really bad finish to the season. We'll see what they do, right? They've made some good moves this offseason. So right now, I don't feel like the Eagles or the Cowboys are going to just fall off of the cliff. But they may not be as dominant as they were last year. The Eagles weren't even dominant last year. They just found ways to win, and that's what good teams do. We'll see. And then the Giants, they're kind of floating around in no man's land, so, similar to us, right? We really don't know what the Giants are going to do. Then this is where you can tell he's had a couple cups, and they all had these feel like shots. These don't feel like they had any kind of juice or alternative liquid in them. This all feels like he was just taking straight shots. We have a chance at making a deep playoff run. Whoa, Calvin. Bro, we haven't won a playoff game since 2005. Okay. You skipping steps, bro. Easy there, buddy. Okay. And then he says, and finally, we have the coaching staff to figure it out early. I agree. If adjustments need to be made, I think this group will be a lot faster to make those adjustments than the last group that was here. He says, I'll wait till post-draft cuts, but this could very well be a year more special than what Houston did last year. Again, another reference to the Texans from last year. I really want you guys to not program your brains to thinking that this is what the Texans did last year. Again, I can't stress this enough. We are not the Texans from last year. They were already 2 years in, going into year 3 of their rebuild. This is year 1. You know what year 1 of their rebuild produced? 2 wins. If I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 wins. Okay. We're not the Lions. Okay. We're none of those teams. But I appreciate the comment, Calvin. And I bring Calvin's comment up because this came out today. And I can't speak for you, and I would like you to answer this question. I want you to fill in this blank. You're looking at the Washington Commanders win total over under for the 2024 season. All right, 2024 over under win total for the Commanders. Your reaction to this is what? Fill in that blank. Your reaction to the win total, you're looking at it. You are looking live at the win total. If I'm going to fill in that blank, the Washington Commanders over under win total for 2024 is what? Wow. That's high. Am I tripping? Am I too low on this team? Bro, they haven't even seen who we're going to draft at quarterback, and they got us at 7.5? Wait a minute. Do you know what that says? Do you know what the over-under win total was last year? And I thought we had a better chance last year than I do this year. It was 6.5. They all denounced Sam last year. That's why the number was so low last year. They didn't believe in Ron and company, one, but two, they really didn't believe because the over-under total is really driven by who's your quarterback. Do we believe in your quarterback? We'll take the team into consideration, but do we buy your quarterback? This number is very reflective on your entire team, but more importantly, your quarterback. They don't even know who our quarterback is yet. And they've got us at 7.5. And I purposefully put all the teams in this graphic that either have the same over-under win total as we do or are lower than us. This 7.5 is the same number we had for 2022 when they thought that Carson Wentz, and I thought he could do the same, they thought Carson Wentz could just be solid. They put the number at 7.5. When they think you have a chance to be solid, they put the number at 7.5. Are my eyes deceiving me? Am I tripping? Am I tripping? So let's go through this real quick. All right. The Saints are at 7.5. They have Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr is ass. Remember when we were talking about potentially getting Derek Carr, and I was like, no, thank you. I was like my son. You know, you teach your kids manners, and you're like, hey, son, would you like some chocolate ice cream? No, thank you. Do you want Derek Carr? No, thank you. I appreciate it. No, thank you. No, thanks. That 7.5 with an established quarterback like Derek Carr in a division that isn't great, but it's going to be improved because of the Falcons. Did you see the Falcons win total, by the way? A lot of you Kirk Cousins haters can eat. You know what? Okay. Do you know what their number is for this season? It's 10.5. Okay. It's 10.5. You know why it's 10.5? Not because they hired Raheem Morris. Not because they signed Darnell Mooney. You know why it's 10.5? Because they signed Kirk Cousins. That's why. And they play in a division that they think the Falcons can stockpile wins. Now, we don't know if they're going to hit that total or not. Now, I know the Kirk bashers out there will say, well, we'll see now, won't we? Yeah, we will. All right. That number is a bit high. I will admit 10.5 is a bit on the high side. I'd probably take the under there, but I like the talent on that team. We'll see what happens. But anyway, the Saints are at 7.5. That feels a bit disrespectful to the Saints, even though I don't love Derek Carr. And in a very bad division last year, they weren't able to grab that division by the horns and strangle the rest of the teams in that division and win it. So maybe that's a fair number for them. I don't think they've made any drastic upgrades to their roster. They're the same team that they were last year, just a bit older. 7.5 is probably good for them. Seahawks at 7.5. Interesting, you know. Geno Smith came back down to earth a bit last year, did deal with, an injury, but that's a talented football team. They got a new head coach, and I think that's what this number is reflective of. Like, we're not quite sure what Mike McDonald is going to be as a head coach, but we know they're talented, so we'll put the number at 7.5. They could easily exceed this, by the way. All right, they could easily exceed this because of the talent that exists in Seattle. But they don't know about Mike McDonald, and I think that's what the number represents, right? And then there's us. How are we with Seattle and New Orleans at 7.5? Again, am I tripping? Because this could be a me thing. This could be a Louie T thing. I could be tripping. And all of you who say, Louie T, your number is too low, you tripping, this could be confirmation that I, in fact, am tripping. I don't feel like I'm tripping. I feel like I'm being rational and reasonable I've seen rebuilds done before. Okay, wait. Recalibrations. I've seen recalibrations executed before. And generally, every so often, you show up a year early. It's rare, though. Very rare, right? So essentially, they're saying you're equals with the Saints and the Seahawks, who both have veteran established quarterbacks and better rosters than we do. Now, the Saints, I don't really know about that. But the Seahawks have a better roster than we do. That's not up for debate. Okay? And yet somehow, without even seeing who our quarterback is going to be for the upcoming season, hell, it could be Marcus Mariota. They've got us at 7.5 wins. You know what this says to me? One, sure, the moves that they've made in free agency were really shrewd and they were good moves and they're nice and all of that good stuff. But there hadn't been a single guy that we signed that moved the needle enough. Again, Frankie Louvu doesn't move the needle in Vegas. Okay? Bobby Wagner isn't moving the needle in Vegas for a Commanders team that went 4-13 a season ago. Okay? Trust me. I've been at this long enough to know. Okay? Jeremy Chin doesn't even register on the radar. These are guys that we feel really good about. They're not moving the needle. They're not going from 7 to 7.5 because we signed Tyler Biadasz. Now, all of those moves in a vacuum, sure, that helped. But you know what this really says? We trust new ownership. We trust Adam Peters, but more importantly, we trust Dan Quinn. And we think you're going to play defense no matter who your quarterback is, which is what I think, and I've said this, we're going to be competitive defensively, which is going to lead to us being competitive as a team. It does not mean that you're going to win those games. It just means you're going to be in them with a chance, which is all you can ask for, right? Vegas agrees with that assessment. That's what this number says to me. We are buying into Dan Quinn and his ability to coach up, scheme up defense. Joe Witt Jr. whipping that defense into shape with the guys that you brought in. You're going to be in ball games. You already had Payne and Allen. You've added real linebackers behind them. You've added some defensive ends that will help. You got to see what happens in that secondary. But you've got a lot of workable parts on that defense, and you've got two guys in Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn in particular that we trust will have you in ball games and give you a shot to win. That's what this number is reflective of for me. We don't even have a quarterback yet, and this number's at 7.5. How is that possible? That's the only thing that my brain can register and compute and say this and make it make sense. Right? Look at the rest of the teams that we are over. The Giants in our own division. We can't even beat the damn Giants. Somehow, we're higher than the Giants. They're at 6.5. The Giants didn't get worse this offseason. They traded for a potential star edge rusher in Brian Burns. Sure, they lost Xavier McKinney, but they've made upgrades to their roster. They're going to potentially get themselves a quarterback. If they don't get a quarterback early in the draft, they'll be getting themselves a premier top flight wide receiver, one of the best in the draft. That didn't affect Vegas enough for them to put them over Washington, or at least as an equal. The Raiders don't have a quarterback. They have Gardner Minshew. It makes sense that they're 6.5. I get it. The Vikings lost Kirk Cousins. They don't have a quarterback. All right. I get it. We understand why they're at 6.5. The Cardinals, all right, they were one of the worst teams last year, but they were competitive. I could see that number being a bit low for them. Murray came back. He actually didn't play all that bad last season, and they're going to improve their roster. They got 2 first-round picks. They could turn it into 3 if they so choose. I don't know if that number is reflective of where Arizona will be or not, but okay, I get it, right? Titans, we don't know about their quarterback situation. All we know is that they like what they saw from Will Levis last year. I don't think the Titans are very good. I told you that last year. I was right last year. And Vegas doesn't think they're very good this year. They're at 5.5. Okay, I get it. Denver doesn't have a quarterback. And if they draft one, we still don't buy into what Sean Payton is selling. They don't know what they're doing in Denver right now. They don't know if they're coming or going. Sean Payton has been a disaster since he got there. Every move the Broncos have made since new ownership has come in, really since the new GM has come in, has been a disaster. From trading for Russell Wilson to trading for Sean Payton, none of it has worked. And now they find themselves at 5.5. And I don't blame Vegas for that. Panthers at 4.5, self-explanatory. And the Patriots are at 4.5. All right. That's self-explanatory. They don't have a quarterback either. But look at that. Look at the 2 teams that were right with us last year. Look, just make this make sense for a second. The Panthers had the worst record in football. They're at 4.5 this year. We had the second worst record, tied with the New England Patriots. Tied with the Patriots. We were both 4-13. Who were also tied with the Arizona Cardinals, who were also 4-13. Yet, the Panthers are at 4.5. The Patriots are at 4.5. The Cardinals are at 6.5 with Kyler Murray, I may add. And we're at 7.5 without a quarterback. Again, that says to me that they're buying into what Dan Quinn and company are selling. I myself am surprised by this number. I'm shocked. Okay, if I'm filling in the blank, Washington Commanders over under total of 7.5 is ... shocking to me. Shocking to me. We'll see what happens. All right. That number is very high to me. All right. And look, my guy, Calvin Krim, said he doesn't want to hear 6 to 8 wins. He doesn't even want to hear that. Well, hell, Vegas said, hey, we'll put you at 7.5. I think that's too damn high. But again, I'll ask this question. I wasn't looking to talk your head off tonight. I just wanted to do this live because I was waiting on a video that just never showed up. You know, so I just said I might as well go ahead, knock this out, and keep it pushing. But does this 7.5 number change the way that you feel at all? You know, Vegas usually, they know a little something out in the desert, okay? They're not always right, but they usually aren't too far off either. You know, there have been years where we've sat here. I can specifically talk about myself. There have been years where I've mocked Vegas. Oh my God, they got us at 6.5. That's disrespectful. If I had 1,000, I would slap it down right now, right? And then our monkey ass would go out and win 4 games like we did last year, which the number was 6.5 last year. I laughed at that. We won 4 games after 7 weeks of ball last season. We were 4-3. All right. We were 4-3 after beating the Atlanta Falcons, I believe. No, we beat the Patriots and we were 4-4. Okay. We were 4-4 going into the week 9 game. We were 4-5. We were 3-5 after we lost to the Eagles. we were 4-5, won our last win of the season after we beat the Patriots in week 9. But we were 2-0 to start the season off. And I remember saying to myself, 6.5. That's some easy money right there. They were so wrong about us. And we would kill Adam Rank every year. He's got us at the bottom of the totem pole, shitting on us, 4-13, 3-14, all kinds of bullshit. And we would send all kinds of nasty messages to Adam Rank. You know, you suck. You don't know what you're talking about. We would drag his ass. And he'd always get the last laugh. Well, for once, maybe, just maybe, just maybe, Vegas knows something, and I'm too low, and they're closer to where we're going to be than I am, which I would be excited about. Because right now, I'm at 5 to 7 wins. And as I've said already, and I've said this all offseason, with the moves that have been made, we're going to be in football games. And if the ball bounces our way, if we play mistake-free ball, if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, if this Joe Witt Jr. defense, along with Dan Quinn, comes here and does what Dan Quinn defenses and Joe Witt Jr. defenses have done in the past, if their track record that precedes them follows them to Washington, and we're one of the top turnover-producing teams in the NFL, all bets are off. What have I always called turnovers? What have I always called them? The great equalizer. You don't have to be the best team. You just got to be the one that takes care of the ball the best to give you a chance. Anyway, that kind of knocked my socks off, that 7.5. That's a pretty interesting number, I will call it, especially given that we don't even have a quarterback yet. We don't know what our tackle situation is. None of that. They just handed out a 7.5. Okay. I mean, I'm not telling you that 7.5 is some robust number that means we're going to the playoffs. Like, I don't want you to think that this 7.5 is some crazy cockamamie number. I'm just telling you it's a lot higher than I was thinking. I would have thought we would have been closer to 5.5. Like, they would have really shitted on us this year. Like, okay, rebuild, turning over the roster, new staff, new direction, new head coach, new quarterback. A lot of questions, not enough answers. Yeah, we're just going to slap a 5.5 on them and keep it pushing. If it was 6.5, I wouldn't have blinked, even though I would have still went, But I wouldn't have been like, hey, wait a minute. We'll see what happens. I will say this. This has not changed my outlook, but it has made me think a bit like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a little off. We'll see. The draft will go a long way in kind of shaping and molding how I feel. And even if I don't agree with what is done necessarily, doesn't mean that I'm not going to still feel like they have a plan in place and they're going to execute. My vision for what this looks like and their vision might be two totally different things. I don't give a damn what it looks like as long as the results are what we all want, which is winning at a very high clip. We didn't want Dan Quinn initially. Look how that's turned out for us so far. So, so much for what we want or what we think we know, right? So we'll see how all of this goes. At the end of the day, that number, a lot higher than I thought. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. Journey Reed, thank you for being a member for 24 months. Says, I can see us in the 6 to 8 win range. Appreciate you, Lou. That's where I think I can build myself up to with a strong draft. If I feel better than I feel right now after the draft, post-draft, I think that number goes up from 5 to 7 to 6 to 8 for me. Okay. Which would put us right in that range of where Vegas has us at 7.5, right? And if you go under that 7.5, it'll put you right in that 6 to 8 range. If you go over that 7.5, it'll put you right in that 6 to 8 range. So again, a strong draft will put me right where Vegas thinks we're going to be. So maybe it's not that far-fetched of a number. I'm just shocked that they didn't even, like, I would have thought that after the draft and maybe getting a quarterback that they believe in, or, you know, this, that, and the third, and maybe they just say, it doesn't matter who you draft. That guy's not going to move the needle anyway. This is the number, and this is where we're putting it, and this is how we feel, right? Well, we'll see, right? Billy A., thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, drug test Calvin immediately. Playoffs? We're not drug testing Calvin, okay? First of all, Calvin isn't under the influence of any drugs, medicinal or not. Calvin is inebriated a bit. He's drinking the Kool-Aid, all right? He's spiked his own personal cup multiple times. He's got a little flask, and he's pouring it in, and he's guzzling. He's not sipping, he's guzzling, and that's fine. He's not the only one. And I told you, I won't rain on anybody's parade. I'm not a dream killer. But I do like to offer cold doses of reality from time to time. But who am I? I'm the guy that said 11 wins last year and 12 the year before. Who am I to tell somebody they're tripping? Okay. Who am I to do that? Let Calvin Krim think that this team can do something that most of us don't see happening. Okay. The improbable. He says a better season than Houston. Who could envision a season better than the one the Texans turned in last year? In year one of a new head coach and a new quarterback. Who could envision that? Arguably the greatest rookie quarterback season we've ever seen. He thinks we can do better than that. Now, he didn't say we would. He says it could happen. We'll see. Jack Taberley, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, way too high. Can't pretend it doesn't feel good. It does feel good, feel good. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't. That's why I've got this grin on my face. Because for years, a wise man has said this multiple times. This organization has overpromised and underdelivered. You know what would be nice for a change is if they underpromise and overdeliver. This number feels a bit ambitious to me. It does. I still think that when it's all said and done, the dust settles, smoke clears. This is a 6-win. If the ball bounces our way, a 7-win football team, which is not going to exceed the 7.5 number that they set it at. But it feels good that they think that this team could potentially be an 8-win ball club. That feels good. I'm not going to lie. Dre Star, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Dre writes, the fix is in. We back up. It sounds, I didn't know Roger Goodell was from this area. Sounds like he might even be a Commanders fan, or, grew up a Redskins fan. I can say this. Every owner in the NFL wants to see Washington good again. I don't think there's a single owner that doesn't want Washington to be relevant again. Because if Washington's relevant again, it's good for the league. It's good for their bottom line. It makes them more money. Anytime any team in the NFC East is damn good, it's good for the league. But especially a team like Washington that's in one of the bigger media markets in the country. You would like to capitalize off of Washington. being better than what they've been over the better part of the last 2 decades. So we'll see. Jack Taberley, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Jack writes, forgive me if this has been touched on already, but what if instead of trading back in round 1 for a tackle, we paired Jaden with Neighbors, lethal attack? You know what you'd have to give up to get all the way back up? You'd literally have to take Jaden Daniels at 2, or you'd have to trade back with New England, and they've already told you that they want Drake May, and you trade back with New England. And I don't see why New England would do that, right? I just sit there. This is the scenario that I've posed in other videos. New England has their eye on one quarterback and one quarterback alone, and if that guy's not there, they're not interested in staying at 3. So if you get wind of that and you're good with either one of the 2 quarterbacks, you could use that as leverage. If you don't come up here to 2, we're taking the guy that you want. That would net you more draft capital, and then you could then use that draft capital that you've netted from New England to then move back up in front of, say, the Giants, right? But you also have to think about this. It's going to take a hell of a lot to get back up in front of them, more than you're probably willing to give up. That's number 1. And number 2, every single team from 4 to 6 is in the hunt for a wide receiver, and the Giants would also like to get their hands on a quarterback if at all possible. So again, if let's say Arizona says we're not moving, they're taking a receiver. If the Chargers don't move, they're taking a receiver. That would prompt the Giants to probably take a quarterback at that point. My guess would be J.J. McCarthy. If he's available, he could already be gone by then, and it could be Drake May, whatever the case may be. I said all of that to say this: you're probably not getting Malik Neighbors, is what I'm telling you. It's going to be damn near impossible to get back into the top. Now, the Texans did it last year, right? They took their quarterback at 2, and then they came all the way back up into the top 5, and they got their edge rusher and Will Anderson Jr. It's not impossible, but also keep in mind the Texans had 2 first-round picks to begin with. We don't. Okay? So they had some capital to play around with, to maneuver and do the things that they ultimately did. We don't. Okay? They were still eating good off of that Deshaun Watson trade. So I can't see that happen, Jack. I can't see it happening. King of the North, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, King of the North. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, 7.5 definitely shows Vegas respects the new front office structure and the direction the team is headed. Absolutely, it does. He says, I'd hammer the under right now. Me too. Me too. Is that bad? Is that bad, King of the North? That we both would be hammering the under right now. Also, we all know you will have us winning 9 games by opening day, Lou. LOL. I'm not, though. I promise you. I will be optimistic. No matter what happens, I'm a sucker. Okay, I tell you guys this all the time. I might talk shit and I might predict us to lose, but once I sit in front of my television at 1:05 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, I'm like, hey, let's go beat these bastards. And I'm thinking crazy. I don't care who we're playing, right? But I don't think my number is going to change. And I know if this offseason continues to go in the direction, and I have no reason to believe that it won't continue to go in the direction that it's been going in with Chef Pete cooking the way that he has, there will be more excitement. And that number will rise, but it's not going to get to 9. I've already told you 6 to 8 is as high as I'm going to go. And I'm going to stay steadfast at 6 to 8. And I think 8 is a damn good first year for Dan Quinn. If he comes in here and we go 8 and 9, you damn right I'm going to be excited about what next year looks like, especially if that young quarterback plays well in that rookie campaign. You damn right I'll be talking crazy next year. Now, if this team goes 5 and 12 or 6 and 11, then I might be, and my expectations might be tempered a bit for next year. And I might still be like, year 2, 9 wins on the high side, 7 to 9. I might bump it up to 7, to 9. But if they get to 8 in year 1, that's a hell of a first year. And, some don't see it that way. That'd be a hell of a first year. Now, obviously, what also has to be taken into consideration is how you get to 8. We started out 2-0 last season, and we only ended up with 4 wins. So, that's pretty rough, right? If we start out the season 6-2 and we end up with 8 wins, that's not a good season, right? It totally changes the way you feel. But if we're, consistently in ball games, you're 2-2 at one point, then you're 2-5, and then you're 4-5, and then you're 4-6, and then you're 6-6, and then you lose 3 straight, and you're 6-9, and you win the final 2 games of the season, and you're 8-9. You'll feel good about that. That was a good season. We were 6-6 with a chance to be in the playoffs, right? We'll see how it goes. I'm telling you right now, and I know you don't have any confidence in me, and I've earned that, by the way. You have every right to laugh at me and say, hey, keep it a buck. That number is going to be 9 before the season starts. Yeah, I deserve that. Okay, I've earned that. I'm telling you right now, that number is not going any higher than 8 for me. And it's at 5 to 7 right now. And I got to see what the draft looks like. And I got no doubts that they're going to murder the draft. And Chef P's going to cook it up like he's been cooking it up all offseason. And it's going to be a beautiful spread after the draft. And I'm going to look and I'm going to be like, oh my God, this is heaven. And I'm going to use self-restraint, and I'm only going to move that number up 1, as in 6 to 8. But yes, Vegas definitely is telling us it's different. You don't have to believe me now. Vegas is even saying it's different with their win total. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I think we are pessimistic because of our past, but this is a new front office / new staff, but I understand the reluctance. I think you're talking to a good chunk of the fan base. I don't think you're talking to me, though, because you're saying the same thing that I've been preaching to other fans. I don't think what I feel is being pessimistic. I think it's being realistic, understanding that this is a whole new setup. What they've effectively done, what Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and this staff in the front office, Lance Newmark and company, what they've effectively done with this free agency class is they've said, we're not looking to be anybody's doormat. We're not coming in here to just be competitive. We want to win some games, okay? I still think that the overarching theme and their baseline for what they've done is we need to be competitive every single week. There can't be any more shellackings at home where the home fans are leaving in the third quarter and the visiting fans take over the stadium and are chanting their favorite team's slogan, right? Can't be any go pack goals midway through the third quarter, right? And it sounded like a Packers home game. Can't be any EAGLES Eagle chants in the crowd early stages of the fourth quarter because we're getting our ass handed to us. I think that's what the free agency period represented. We're going to look to compete right away. But trust me, they're not expecting 11 wins this season. If it comes, they're not going to turn it down, and they're going to fight like hell to get there. But realistically, they're not going to give us a number, nor should they put a number on it. That's for us to do. But realistically, when you are rebuilding, when you're turning over a roster or recalibrating and finding your north, it usually doesn't result in a bunch of victories happening that first year. And that's been shown over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. There's enough data out there that shows that when a team does what we just did, new front office, new head coach, rookie quarterback, all of those things, generally, you're not going to have a favorable outcome to your season. That's just what the odds say. I don't think that's being pessimistic. I think that's being realistic. However, there are a lot of fans, to your point, David, there are a lot of fans who are holding the past against this staff, and I don't think that's fair. The fan that says, I've been patient for 20 years. I don't feel like I need to wait any longer. They need to win now. That's not fair to this group. That's not fair to Dan Quinn. That's not fair to Adam Peters. That's not fair. And I know life isn't fair. That's not fair to Lance Newmark. That's not fair to Cliff Kingsbury. That's not fair to Joe Witt Jr. That you're putting 20 years of frustration, heartbreak, and disappointment onto this staff, and you're projecting that onto them immediately and asking them to fix 25 years of dysfunction in one offseason. That's not fair. So there are fans out there like that who, and you know, I had one of my favorite comments so far is when we talk about the Kool-Aid, is somebody says, hey, the Kool-Aid stays in the fridge. Now, I like what we've done, but until I see how the draft goes, my hand is reaching for the fridge, but it ain't open yet. I understand that. I got a cup in my hand. It just ain't nothing in it, right? I mean, it's Kool-Aid in it, but it ain't spiked. It's just regular Kool-Aid. And I'm sipping slow. All right? Some of y'all got full Kool-Aid mustaches. All of this shit is red. Right here. Like, damn, how much did you have already? I don't know, man. It was so good. I'm not pessimistic, David, but there are some that are. I think I'm being realistic. Now, I'm going to root like hell for them to do the unthinkable this year, which is win 9, 10 games. All right. And prove me wrong and others like me who think that this team can't win that many games in year one. I'm going to be rooting like hell to be wrong. I just don't think I'm going to be wrong. And there's nothing wrong with setting the bar realistically. Normally, I like to set the bar high. And if I don't hit it, so what? That's how I live my life. I set the bar extremely high and I die trying to get to it. You want to know why I'm always late? I'll save that for another conversation. Anyway, Chris 412. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Chris 412 writes, Justin Jefferson 11-23 for number 2. Shador next year. Again, too many fans like to play the next year card as if you know how next year is going to go. You trade all of those things to let the Vikings get up here, right? You roll with Marcus Mariota this year. If you're going to do that, you're rolling with Mariota this year. If you were going to do that, you might as well have kept Sam, to be honest with you. The hell are we rolling out Marcus Mariota for? Right? That would make no sense. This is why you got to know we're drafting a quarterback. Because if you're going to do that, you would have kept Sam here. You're not going to trade Sam so you can start Marcus Mariota in year one of Dan Quinn's recalibration. That would be like the worst thing they could do. That said, I mean, literally, you would be one injury away from Jake Fromm getting into the... Do you really want to see that? No, I don't. But the thing that I always laugh at, this is comical to me, is the fan that says, yeah, we'll just get the quarterback next year. As if there's some kind of magic, golden ticket. Like this is Willy Wonka. And there's some kind of golden ticket that ensures you that you'll get the #1 overall pick next year should you pass on quarterback this year. There's a golden ticket. Here's the #1 pick. You can get your quarterback next year. What do you think? With all of that draft capital and Justin Jefferson added to this roster, you really think we're going to win 3 or 4 games and end up with the #1 pick in the draft? You're right. Even with Marcus Mariota in this defense, you're still going to win 5 games. That's not getting you the #1 pick. Somebody's going to need a quarterback that's ahead of us. More likely than not, the team that ends up with the #1 pick in the draft is going to need a quarterback. You can't play that game, Chris. You can't. You don't want to be this high again. And you have to play it in a manner that you don't expect to be this high again. You don't want to be the Vikings next year trying desperately to get up, hoping somebody will let you into the top 3 to get a quarterback. And just so you know, this next year's crop of quarterbacks isn't nearly as strong as this year's crop. It's literally Shador and then a bunch of guys you hope are good. And I'll even take it a step further. I'm not sure Shador is good yet. I've seen a lot of good things. I've also seen a lot of flaws in his game as well. So we'll see. We'll see. But that's not a deal I'd be interested in taking because I'm not willing to pass up the opportunity to get a quarterback. Now, I'll tell you this. If they were to throw in a first-round pick next year, in addition to all of that stuff, that's a pretty hard deal to pass up if you're Washington. Pretty hard deal to pass up. I'll say that. And they said they're listening, and it'd take a damn Brinks truck to get them to move. Well, Justin Jefferson, and here's the thing with Jefferson, you got to pay him. So that sounds enticing, but that cap that we've been ranting and raving about how good our cap situation is, he's going to eat into a huge chunk of that. That money that you save by not having a quarterback, you're eating a lot of that up by paying Justin Jefferson. Because he's going to reset the wide receiver market. We're talking over $30 million a year. So, but I will say, you throw in a first rounder in 2025, in addition to the 2 first rounders this year, you're swapping, was 1 extra first rounder because you're swapping 2 and 11, and then you're getting the additional 23 and Justin Jefferson, and you get a first rounder next year. That's pretty damn hard to turn down. I will say that. It's pretty hard to turn down, but I don't see us moving. Coach T. Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Coach T. Brown writes, number 2, JD. Number 36, offensive tackle, Arizona or Yale. And then number 40, Leggett or BPA. 67, Leggett. I don't think he's going to be there. You don't spend 40 on Xavier Leggett, you ain't getting him. Not unless you trade back up. But you want Xavier Leggett, you're going to have to spend 40 on him, bro. It's as simple as that. I don't think I've seen him any lower than the 9th rated receiver on most draft boards, big boards for receiver. I don't think he's lower than 9. I think the lowest I've seen him, I think, is 10. I think 9 is right around the area. 8 to 9 is where most people have him in terms of their wide receiver big board. If that is in fact the case, and most of the league views it in the same light, and we're talking anywhere from 5 to 7 receivers going in the first round, do you really think we're going to go the entire, let's just say, let's go worst case scenario, 5 receivers go, right? That's as low as it gets, because you've got 3 of the receivers are, you could argue, top 5 best players in the draft, the entire draft, in Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. They're three of the best players in the entire draft. So you know those three are going in the first round. Brian Thomas Jr. of LSU going in the first round. My guess is one of the two. I don't know if both, maybe both go. The Oregon receiver goes in the first round. The kid from Texas, Adonai Mitchell, probably goes in the first round. I may be forgetting a receiver or two. Pardon me if I did. The Xavier Worthy, guy that broke the 40 record, his name has probably been entered into the mix. I still don't think he's a first round pick. But, people go Google Gaga over speed. So let's just assume we just take 5, okay? 5 receivers. The top 3, and then you can take whichever one you want. Troy Franklin from Oregon or Adonai Mitchell, right? You do whatever you want. But you got Brian Thomas Jr. He's probably the 4th guy. He's probably the next guy after the top 3 come off the board. And then we'll take one of those 2. Franklin or Mitchell. That's 5. Okay. Do you think that only 2 or 3 receivers go in the second round? And none of those 2 or 3 are going to be Leggett? That's what you got to ask yourself. No, they're going to keep coming, man. They're not going to stop taking receivers and say, okay, enough win in the first round. Let's start focusing in on other positions. No, they're going to keep pounding that receiver position until the value is no longer there, and then they start turning their attention to other positions. So if you want him, you're going to have to take him at 40, is my guess. As far as everything else you said, I'm not a big fan of Jordan Morgan myself. I think you could do so much better at the tackle position. And the Yale tackle is extremely raw, right? Omegadeji. Kieran Omegadeji is extremely raw. I think you can find something better. I'm still looking just to see, but I think you can find something better than those 2. But they're going to do something at tackle, and it may be one of those 2 guys. Who knows? King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, if Drake May at 2, I'm taking the under. If it's Daniels at 2, I'm taking the under. I'm still taking the under, but I think about it a bit longer, a lot longer, he says. I think I agree with that statement. I think I agree because I think Drake May is going to require some patience and some time. He's young, man. He's not like Jaden Daniels, who has 54 career starts under his belt. We're talking about a 2-year starter. We're talking about a puppy in Drake May. So I expect the bumps to be a little bit harsher. The turns, the ups and the downs to be a little bit more frequent. But I've said this already. The payoff might be a bit larger, right? If you play the lotto, Jaden Daniels is any order, right? He's any order. Drake May is exact. Meaning, you got to hit that number exactly the way you put it in. So if you're playing 48-16, pick 4, it's got to come out 48-16. If it does, the payout is much more than you playing any order, and it could come out 6-8-4-1. You still win because it's any order. Same 4 numbers, just not going to pay out as much. to me, Jaden Daniels gives you a better shot in year one of winning and hitting that over that number that Vegas set and going over it. He gives you a better shot to me in year one. But overall, does he give you the best chance of pursuing a Super Bowl long term? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Who knows? We'll see. Video channel. Been a member for 8 months. Truly appreciate you. Video channel writes, Lou, are you going to react live after Jaden and Drake's pro days this week? Also, what is a realistic tackle at 36 that could be available? So, no, I'm not going to react to those live. I won't be in the office. Now, I'll be here tomorrow, and if I'm not mistaken, Jaden Daniels' pro day is tomorrow. If I had to guess, NFL Network will probably be covering it live. ESPN, somebody will have it live, and I may tune in. You know, what the hell? I ain't got, I got other shit to do though, so I don't know if I will or not. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I've never once watched a pro day before. I have no interest in it. Okay, it's even worse than the combine. So, because it's really about one guy, so I'm not really interested in watching it and nor reacting to it. But at the end of the day, they're there. The people that need to be there will be there. They'll feel how they feel. They'll talk to. What's more important is, as long as he doesn't Teddy Bridgewater himself and then, bomb the interviews, which he won't. They'll talk to him. They'll feel good about the situation, and it'll be what it is, right? I won't be in the office though for the Drake May pro day. So no, the likelihood is I won't be going live, but I'll be live tomorrow night. So we'll be able to talk about Jaden Daniels pro day tomorrow night. I'll be live. But honestly, I don't think I'll ever be that rabid of a fan to be reacting to somebody's pro day. Pro days are trash. They're not for us as fans. They're for evaluators. If you're actually there in person, it's probably a great thing to attend. But watching on TV, it's the same thing as watching film. The reason they go to the pro day is because it's the direct opposite of watching film. You get to see it live and in person. You get to see that guy. You get to see him in his element. You get to see him throw. You get to see the ball leave his hands. You get to see the velocity. You get to feel it. That's what Adam Peters talked about. If you're watching it on TV, it's no different than watching the combine or watching him play in a game. So it serves no purpose, if you ask me. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, David, writes, Lou, thoughts on AP saying we're going to start camp with 4 quarterbacks one way or the other? Do you think we take a stab at a QB on day 2 or an undrafted? I reacted to that already. If you watch my reaction video, I did a reaction video of Adam Peters scrum with the media at Orlando. That video is up now, and I talked about that. And that was one of the things that I think was the most revealing, right? And he didn't say anything crazy. All he said is, we're going to camp. Every team goes to camp with 4 quarterbacks. So he didn't say anything crazy. I just didn't expect him to say it because we only have 2 on the roster right now. So he's insinuating that we're adding 2 more quarterbacks. We know we're adding 1 at 2. I've already told you guys, I wouldn't be shocked. And I told y'all, I think we're drafting another quarterback. If you look at his track record or you look at what they did in San Francisco, understand that people are shaped and molded by their experiences and their environment. He just came from San Francisco. What did Kyle Shanahan do like every 2 years? He always drafted a quarterback in day 3. Okay. whether it was Nick Mullins or it was CJ Beathard or it was Brock Purdy, he always drafted a quarterback in day 3. You can never be too cautious with a young, quarterback, cheap option to back up your guy, know your system. They always like to do that. And I think he's going to do that. And I already told you, we're going to have 3 quarterbacks on this roster. This is not a 2 quarterback roster team. We're a 3 quarterback roster team this year and probably next year too. Maybe not next year. I could see if they draft 2 rookies, I could see the 2 second-year quarterbacks being your 2 quarterbacks next year with no backup behind the rookie who's going to be a rookie this year. No backup behind the second-year quarterback next year. But this year, you want that rookie to have the tutelage and the mentorship of a Marcus Mariota. You don't need that next year, right? So, they're not drafting. So let me just answer your question. They're not drafting a quarterback on day 2. Okay. They're not doing that. They're not going the old Robert Griffin III, Kirk Cousins method. They were going to take Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. And then the Seahawks took him first. So they ended up taking Kirk in the 4th round. But they were going to go quarterback in day 1, quarterback in day 2 back in 2012. They're not doing that here, though. And they didn't do that in San Francisco. And I think what Kyle learned from that experience is that you're going to take a quarterback in that same draft that you take your first round quarterback. There needs to be a sizable gap in between the rounds so that you would hope that your first round quarterback doesn't feel threatened by a 4th or a 5th round quarterback. Hell, even a 3rd round quarterback. But we're humans. And a guy drafted in day 2 isn't that far behind the guy that was drafted the day before. So naturally, you don't want your quarterback looking over his shoulder. He's not looking over his shoulder at a 6th or 7th round pick. He shouldn't be, at least. So it won't be a day 2 quarterback, but I could see a day 3 for sure. 16 Devil Doc, been a member for 31 months. Appreciate you, who writes. Lou, hope you and the fam are doing well. Likewise, 16 Devil Doc. Do you see any decent or above average tackles being released after the draft? Thinking AP has some in mind. Hold on, let me go back to somebody else. Video channel asked about a tackle that could be available at 36. It's going to be hard to say about tackle being available at 36 because the prevailing thought is 7 go in the first round. There's been some really lofty numbers thrown out at both the tackle, quarterback, and receiver position. Somebody's going to get cut short. Somebody's not getting 7, especially if the quarterback position gets 6, which is insane to me. I think the number is going to be 5 at quarterback. We've never had a draft where there are 6 quarterbacks taken. I don't see this being the first. I think it's going to end up being 5. I could see 6 receivers. I don't see 7 going in the first round, but you just never know. Tackles are different now. They're more like quarterbacks. They get pushed up, and it's supply and demand, and there's a ton of supply right now, and there's always a demand. And so I could see an instance where 6 or 7 go in the first round. Now, what 6 or 7 go? That's the question. They're gonna be some interesting names at the top of the second round. I'm hoping 1 or 2 are a surprise. That's my hope. I still contend that Washington is going to be aggressive in trying to go up and get one, especially if one in particular falls. But we'll see. Right? We'll see. So you asked, so 16 Devil Doc asked about tackles and any maybe shaking free. Again, we won't know. Almost impossible to know. But here's the thing, and this is what I've already kind of thrown out into the atmosphere. If this draft is as deep at tackle as everyone says it is, and I have no reason to believe that it isn't. I don't like some of these tackles, or well, not like, love some of these tackles, but again, tackle is another one of those positions. I think it's arguably the most traitsy position that exists in the NFL. Meaning, to hell with what you see on tape. You don't have to love a guy on tape. Does he have the measurables? Does he have the traits, the movement skills, the strength, the lateral quickness, the punch, right? The ability to stun somebody. Does he have the length? These are the things you're looking for, workable traits. If they have those things, you can reset and rewire his brain and turn him into a better player. Turn him into the player you want him to be. They're still young enough that you can change bad habits and get him to play the way that you want him to play. So you can't allow yourself to be sucked into, oh, I didn't like this or I didn't like that. And, does he have the things that you deem to be important as an offensive line coach? If so, give him to me. That's how most offensive line coaches feel. Give him to me. I can do the rest. If that's the case, there's plenty of tackles in this year's draft class. And with that said, you expect teams to load up. And if that happens and a team ends up getting, an extra tackle that they didn't, expect to get going in, or their mindset always was, if we get this guy falls to us and we get him, we're going to cut so-and-so. That could happen. We've seen it happen before. That's how we ended up with Charles Leno Jr. The Bears ended up getting their hands on a tackle. I want to say it was Tevin Jenkins. I want to say it was that year. They got their hands on a tackle and they said, bye-bye, Charles Leno Jr. We see it happen all the time. We did it with Morgan Moses. We got Sam Cosmi. We cut Morgan Moses. So, again, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be shocked if one or two notable tackles became cap casualties post-draft. Wouldn't be shocked. Mike Leslie, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mike Leslie writes, get a huge haul for your first and draft Penix late in the first. Nah, I'm not interested in that. Again, I didn't suffer through a 4-13 season in which we were blown out in probably 70% of our losses last season. I didn't sit through that to trade back and draft Michael Penix Jr. Nah, that's not. When you go through pain and suffering as a fan base, as a fan, it's not to get the 5th or 6th best quarterback in that year's draft class when you're at number 2. I'm good. I'll pass. And he may turn out to be really good, but again, his ceiling not high enough for me. I'd rather swing and miss on one of the guys at 2 than hit on a Michael Penix Jr. or a JJ McCarthy and them be what I think they are. Now, if their ceiling ends up being higher than what I think, then we just missed. We'll get them next time, Tiger. But if they turn out to be the quarterbacks that I think they are, and they end up being successful in the NFL, Michael Penix Jr. is Tua Tagovailoa if he's successful with a better arm, much better arm, by the way. But he can't run. He's just like Tua. He can't move, right? And there's a ceiling on what the Dolphins can be because of Tua. They can win. I don't know if they'll ever win a Super Bowl with Tua. But he's a quarterback that gives you a chance. And in this league, if you got one of those, you got a chance. So they're not moving on from him, nor should they. But that's not what you're after. You're not after Tua Tagovailoa as your starting quarterback. You'll take him, but you're not after that. right? I'd much rather take a shot at potentially getting, you know, a guy that could end up being a top 5 quarterback in the league and swinging and missing for that than taking a guy that I don't think is ever going to be more than the 9th to 11th best quarterback in the NFL at any given moment, i.e. Dak Prescott. Like, you're not winning a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. I don't personally think. He's a hell of a regular season quarterback. But as we saw with Michael Penix Jr., when they put a real defense on his ass, in that national championship game, he did not respond well at all. Best defense he had seen by a mile that season. He didn't respond. Every single defense that Joe Burrow saw that year at LSU, he carved them up. Don't care how good it was, how good it was perceived. Cut their throats and watch them bleed out. He was vicious with it too. I'm looking for one of those type dudes. Now, again, we'll see. Upside is a lot greater with a Drake May and a Jaden Daniels to me than a Michael Penix Jr. And that injury history, I can't ignore it. I'd love to. I'd love to act like that doesn't exist, but it does. It does. Mike Leslie, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mike Leslie writes, he's the Jalen Hurts of this draft, in my opinion. I don't think he is, because Jalen Hurts offers you the ability to run, and that's what makes him dynamic. Jalen Hurts, when the play breaks down or he doesn't like what he sees, he can tuck it and run. He's a different animal. Michael Penix Jr. isn't running anywhere. He's proven that already in his career. Jalen Hurts was doing exactly what he's doing now in the NFL. He was doing that at Oklahoma. Extending plays, running around, making things happen. He did that in his final year at Oklahoma. So it's not like he wasn't capable. But he showcased the ability to run. He showcased the ability to extend and make plays off script. Michael Penix Jr. really hasn't shown that. And he doesn't want to run, and he can't really run. So I don't think if you're talking about he's the Jalen Hurts of this draft, in your opinion, from the standpoint of an afterthought, guy that people have dismissed, and he could come in the league and end up being an MVP candidate, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see, for sure. Because in that 2020 draft, Jalen Hurts was an afterthought. He was an afterthought. I don't think Michael Penix Jr. is an afterthought necessarily, but of all the quarterbacks, and there's 6 of them, 3 that have separated themselves from the other 3, if you ask me, and then that next wave that J.J. McCarthy is heading up, I think Michael Penix Jr. is at the back of that list. I think that's how teams view him. Anyway, but we'll see. Again, we'll see. Ryland Yancey, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Ryland writes, man, Louie, that NHL movement failed miserably, huh? I won't say it failed. It delayed. He might go out to Seattle and blow up. I haven't gotten rid of the NHL hats yet. I might just have to market them to a different fan base is all. We'll see. If you're talking about here in Washington, yeah, it failed miserably. And, I could still be in denial, but I don't even put it on him. If you would have put Sam Howell on this team with this coaching staff, I don't think we're having the same discussion next year about Sam that we're having right now. But obviously that didn't happen. He's no longer here, and it is what it is. So the real Benjamin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. The real Benjamin writes, I think Washington is getting Caleb at 2. Here we go. What makes you think that, the real Benjamin? And it's some behind the scenes saving face between Chicago and Washington. JD will be number 1. Cliff would have never came here because he can just take the Bears head coach job next year. So none of that makes any sense at all whatsoever. Okay. So let's just go ahead and slice and dice this whole comment that you just made. Just poke holes in this theory all over the place. Let's start with JD will be number 1. If the Bears wanted anybody but Caleb Williams, right, then it's conceivable, and this is the beauty of being number 1. You can do whatever you want. So if they view Jaden Daniels as the number 1 pick in the draft, they can take him. They think he's the best quarterback. They can take him. Excuse me. But here's the thing. If the Bears thought that Jaden Daniels was the pick, why would you make a selection at 1? Why wouldn't you just call Washington and trade the number 1 pick? Because the prevailing thought, and we could be wrong about this, we'll never know. They'll never tell us the answer to this, nor should they. Okay? But the prevailing thought is that every team that needs a quarterback this year would much rather have Caleb Williams than any of the other quarterbacks in this draft class. And again, depends on who you talk to. That might not be true. But I'd put any amount of money. And again, we can never substantiate this. So I can say that and feel good about it because we can never prove this to be true or disprove it. I can't confirm nor deny this. But I feel pretty confident in saying that whomever had an opportunity to select one that needed a quarterback in this draft would take Caleb Williams. And I've said this a million times. No matter who was selecting at 1, the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft is Caleb Williams. So if you're Chicago and you think that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in this draft, then just trade your pick to Washington. Move back a spot and get him and still get draft capital in the process. Why would you waste the number 1 pick on Jaden Daniels when you can get him at 2 and still get, value for the pick? That makes no sense. So that's number 1, right? They're not trading the pick. Chicago's not trading the pick because they're taking Caleb Williams. That's number 1. Number 2, if they were going to take Jaden Daniels, then you would trade the pick, which they're not doing. Okay? So that's poking a hole right there in your first theory, which is JD will be number 1. There's no way Caleb Williams isn't the first pick overall in the 2024 NFL draft. And I'd bet you any amount of money, that he's the number 1 pick. I'll bet you any amount of money Caleb Williams won't be staying in the green room if he decides to show up at the draft, which I find it highly unlikely that he won't. He doesn't strike me as I want to spend this time with my family and embrace. He's going to be at the draft, and he won't be there more than 7 minutes because it won't take Chicago very long to turn the card in with his name on it. Cliff Kingsbury would have never come here because he could just take the Bears job next year. So you're assuming Cliff knew that somehow Washington was going to get Caleb Williams, which is why he came here to coach him. Well, if that's the case, then he could have just gone to Chicago. I mean, not that the job was offered to him, but they did interview him. They did interview him. I don't think they ever offered him the job, but he didn't come to Washington because he wanted to coach Caleb Williams. If they got him, cool, but he came to Washington because he wanted to be an offensive coordinator. He said it already, and I take him at face value. If he wants to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears, that could still happen next year. If Washington has a crazy successful first year and Cliff Kingsbury's offense was humming and the Bears, flame out next year and Matt Eberflus gets fired Cliff Kingsbury could end up being the head coach of the Bears next year. That could still happen. But this notion that Cliff Kingsbury came here, it's the same thing. Like the Vikings hired Josh McCown and he coached Drake May in high school. Does that mean the Vikings are going to get Drake May? No, it doesn't mean that. Josh McCown needed a job. The Vikings hired him. If they get, Drake May, great. That's even better. There's a connection there. He knows his strengths, his weaknesses. Great. But if they get J.J. McCarthy, guess what? Josh McCown will be just fine with being the quarterback's coach for J.J. McCarthy because he needed a job. Cliff Kingsbury needed a job. He was about to take the Raiders job. Our job came available. He wanted this job more, and so he came here. It has nothing to do with Caleb Williams. The Raiders clearly weren't getting Caleb Williams, and he was about to sign there. So, anyway, I digress. Coach T. Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Coach T. Brown, double up. Thank you for doubling up. Coach T. Brown writes, I would take Rattler over Penix or JJ or Nix. Yeah, I think you went a little too far there. I could see Rattler over Penix, not over JJ. I wouldn't take him over Nix either, but you could make an argument about Nix. I would listen. I don't think I would agree, but I'd listen. I'm not taking him over JJ McCarthy, though. That's a bit extreme. But again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Your preference is your preference. And I think there could be an argument made for 2 out of the 3 of those. But JJ McCarthy, nah. I mean, look, I'm not the biggest JJ McCarthy fan, but there's limits now. I still got to draw a line. I won't disrespect the man. Okay. I will say, and I've said this before, and I said it about Sam Howell 3 years ago in the draft. Spencer Rattler is the wild card of the quarterback position in this year's draft class. Same thing I said about Sam Howell. So we'll see. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. King of the Bluegrass writes, how far does Knicks drop if Denver passes at 12? You can't be sure. The Raiders need a quarterback at 13, right? The Rams could take him if they like him, right? I know they got the kid from Georgia that won a couple of national championships. And I've heard that Sean McVay likes him a lot. But maybe he likes Bo Nix more. There's still other teams that could be interested that don't need a quarterback right now, but could need one in the future that could take a Bo Nix, right? My thought is once we get past 13 in the Raiders, we could see no quarterback go the remainder of the first round. Now, there's always the trade back up into the first round to get a guy. You never want to rule that out. But in my mind, the Giants need a quarterback. They may not take one at 6. It may not be a smart decision to take one at 6. It may not be the best value to take one at 6. It may be better to get the receiver, and then let's say Nix and Penix both slip. Because again, this notion that we're going to have 6 quarterbacks going the first round is still asinine to me. And what we always do, we do this shit every year, and almost every year we get proven wrong. And the league speaks, and they speak loudly and boldly. Last year, Will Levis this and Will Levis that, and the league was like, shut up. And Will Levis went in the second round. Okay. 2022, we said, man, this is a bad draft, a draft class of quarterbacks. And the league says, you're right. We got one in the first round, and we got none in the second round. And then they started to go in the third round, right? So the league usually speaks loudly and boldly about the quarterback position. We think we know because all these teams need quarterback. But just because you need a quarterback doesn't mean you take a quarterback, especially if you don't love that quarterback. Sean Payton talked about trading up. So there's clearly someone that he likes, but that someone could be J.J. McCarthy. He may not love Bo Nix. He may not love Michael Penix Jr. And if that's the case, then you don't take either one of those. And let's say the Broncos did just trade away Jerry Jeudy, right? So there's a need there for receiver, among other things. Okay. Who's to say that they don't say, look, man, this draft has been wacky and weird. 4 quarterbacks have already gone off the board. Hell, let's just say 5. Somebody took Bo Nix, right? If 5 quarterbacks go in the first 11 picks and the Broncos are on the clock, you already know that at least 1, if not 2 tackles have gone in that same period. An edge rusher has gone, more likely than not. And there's probably been a corner and or a tight end and or those are probably the positions. It's corner, it's tackle, it's edge rusher, and receiver, non-quarterback wise. There could be a Rome Odunze or someone that slipped to the Denver Broncos. There could be. And instead of reaching for a quarterback, that Spencer Rattler that we just talked about, he'll be there in the second round. Michael Penix Jr., I think, is going to be there in the second round. You want him bad enough, you can trade up and get him in the second round. Won't cost you nearly as much. Again, there's ways to go about it, but how far does Bo Nix drop if Denver doesn't take him at 12? I'm gonna go a step further and say if the Raiders don't take him at 13. My guess is out of the first round, but again, and usually in situations like that, you're either gonna have somebody trade back into the first round and get him, or I think Bo Nix is a second round quarterback. So I wouldn't be shocked if he got the Will Levis treatment. Everybody's assuming he's going to go in the first round, and the league is like, bro, we watched Bo Nix for 60 years in college. He's a second round pick. That's how I feel. I'm not ignoring what he did at Oregon. I'm just aware of he's Bo Nix, right? He's still Bo Nix. What I still want to see is Bo Nix against elite competition, because the last time I saw Bo Nix against elite defensive competition, because there is no defense in the Pac-12. The closest you get to defense usually is Utah. USC doesn't play a lick of defense. Washington doesn't play a lick of defense. Oregon State usually doesn't play a lick of defense. There's no defense in that conference. So, yeah, he's going in there. He's lighting it up. He's not turning it over. Great. Last time I saw him against an upper echelon defense was his first game at Oregon against Georgia, and he looked like Bo Nix. The Bo Nix that I saw that was overwhelmed at Auburn. So I'm still not sure that this iteration of Bo Nix is any better than the Bo Nix that I saw at Auburn. All I know is he's played competition that has allowed him to grow and prosper. But how am I to know if he's going to revert back to the old Bo as soon as he starts seeing NFL competition? That's the $1 million question. Did he benefit? I already talked about that in my breakdown of Bo Nix. Did he benefit from a very simplistic offense that featured a lot of easy layup throws in a conference that doesn't play any defense and an Oregon scheme that allows guys to run wide ass open? Or did he actually just get better? And it could be a combination of the two. Bottom line is, I'm not willing to spend a first round pick to find out. So I think he's ultimately going to be a second round pick. But if he doesn't get selected in the first round, best believe he'll go very quickly, along with Michael Penix Jr. if he doesn't go in the first round either, and early in the second round. There'll be teams potentially trading up to try to get those guys. DJ23. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, you can sell those NHO sound bits to the Seattle YouTubers. Well, he's got to get in the starting lineup first, and he's got to play well first. But then the magic happens. Okay. But only then, right? We got to wait and see. R Young, Smoking Aces 4624. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Show R Young, Smoking Aces 4624 some love. Welcome him with open arms. Show him how we do it here in the mob. R Young, Smoking Aces, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you on board. The Real Benjamin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Magic worked his magic on Cliff and Caleb. Well, he worked his magic on Cliff, all right. Yeah, he did. Caleb didn't have anything to do with this. Again, and that was the part that always befuddled me. It was astounding how many fans made it seem like Caleb Williams was somehow a free agent and we could sway him to come here as if he had a choice. Again, you know, Caleb could have pulled the I'm not playing for the Chicago Bears card, but he doesn't need to do that. And I don't recommend that you do that. You know, Dion's already said Shador and, you know, Hunter and those guys may do that. I don't think that's the right way to go, but I can't tell somebody how to, you know, plan out their future and what it should look like and what they should or shouldn't do. But you know, Caleb doesn't have the choice, right? As long as he's willing to play anywhere, and I take him at face value when he said he'll play anywhere, then there's really nothing to talk about. JB, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JB writes, how are you, Lou? I'm doing pretty good, JB. What about yourself? He says, I don't think now that we are going to be able to get our dude Xavier Legette. I'm looking at other receivers, and now maybe Malachi Corley. And he just lit up his pro day, Dick Corley. But I don't think we're going to get him either. I think he's one of the risers of the receiver position. I thought he had an extremely strong combine. I would rest on those numbers. There's no reason to run another 40. He ran a 4.3, whatever, right? Obviously, the production, he's a one-year dynamo. That might scare some teams. I'm hoping that it does. But I could see somebody saying, hey, this guy's A.J. Brown. This guy is, you know, this guy has the ability to be DK Metcalf. And he's more DK Metcalf than he is A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown is a 4.5 40 guy. I think A.J. Brown might have ran like a 4.48 or something, 4.49, something, you know, high 4.4s, right? DK Metcalf is a 4.3 dude. So is Xavier Legette. So I think teams might see him as another DK Metcalf potentially. And he's a big, strong guy. He's not DK Metcalf big, strong, but he's a big dude, man. I mean, we're talking 6'3", 6'4", 220. He ain't the 6'4", 230, 35-pound monster that DK Metcalf is, but still, considering the circumstances, he's massive. So you're right. I don't think he's even going to be on the board at the time of our first second round selection. If I'm Carolina at the top of the second round, what is there to think about? If he's there, I got a chance to get my quarterback a legit bona fide number 1 wide receiver. Physical kid. He's a Carolina kid. He grew up in Carolina. What are we talking about, man? If I'm the Panthers, he's the pick at 36 or 33, excuse me. He's the pick. You need a receiver. There he is. Go get him. I don't think he's going to be there. I agree. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, David, writes, what position scares you the most on our roster, Lou? For me, it's left tackle. Having a rookie quarterback and a rookie left tackle is scary. Even with corn, is still scary. Yeah, you'd have to say right now, the one position that probably will give you some angst is tackle, right? I'm probably a lot less concerned than a lot of you are. I wasn't as concerned about the offensive line as a lot of you were last year. So I always tend to believe that the offensive line isn't as bad as people say it is until I see it. People just assume this guy sucks. That's what we thought about Eric Flowers until he got here and hands were laid on him, and all of a sudden he was a solid guard, right? I don't play those games. Again, I've always said that. I say this with tackles in the draft that are being told that they're guards at the next level, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to give you every chance to prove that you can until you prove to me that you can't. All right. So I don't know what Nick Allegretti is going to be. I already know what I expect out of Tyler Biadasz. I already know what I expect out of Sam Cosmi. We have no idea what we're getting out of either one of the tackle positions. If Cornelius Lucas is starting at left tackle, similar to what I said about Charles Leno Jr., you can do a hell of a lot worse. If you're starting a rookie tackle, we got to find a guy. We got to find a guy. And you're hoping that you find a stud. But it's only one way to find out. You can't be scared. Scared money don't make money. Can't be scared to put a young fella out there. You just hope he's good enough to get it done. You hope the coaching is good enough to get him where he needs to be. But for me, the position that scares me the most is still corner. I think we'll figure the tackle position out and we'll be fine. That's my prevailing thought, is that they're going to address tackle, whether it's via the draft or post, draft free agency with some guys getting cut loose, what may have you. Other teams may cut guys at the end of training camp and they may bring a guy on board, whatever. I don't know. They're going to figure it out. I'm not as concerned about tackle. Now that Cornelius Lucas is back, I think we can get by this season. I'm more concerned about corner because Dan Quinn said today that he wants to play man coverage. Now, and it's not going to be straight man-to-man, but we saw what he did in Dallas. In order to do that, you need guys that can play the cornerback position. I don't think we have a single man-to-man cover corner on the roster outside of Michael Davis right now. And Michael Davis got cooked last year, but I still think he's closer to the 2022 Michael Davis than what we saw last year because their entire defense, sans for Khalil Mack, was cooked last season. And their coach was cooked last year. And so everything about their defense was a train wreck, including the players on the field, because the coaching wasn't very good last season. If you're telling me Michael Davis is the best man-to-man cover corner potentially on the roster, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Because we saw Benjamin St. Juste can't play man-to-man last year without getting torched. Emmanuel Forbes never struck me as a man-to-man corner. He always struck me as a zone corner with great eyes, with great zone eyes. So we're going to see. I'm still terrified about corner. Still terrified about corner. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I appreciate you guys kicking it with me on this impromptu stream. I had been waiting and waiting and waiting for something from Orlando today, and nothing came out. But this Vegas, over under win total for Washington did come out. And I did want to, go over that comment with you guys from Calvin Krim, and the two kind of made a ton of sense to kind of do this now. So appreciate y'all chopping it up with the kid. I look forward to kicking it with y'all tomorrow night. We will be live, Command Post live. It'll be the last time you'll see yours truly live or in any other capacity with current events going on. Hopefully nothing crazy happens while I'm out of the office. But if it does, I'll just react to it when I get back. But in any event, thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to kicking it with you guys. And we'll do this again tomorrow, right? We'll have a whole different set of topics. Obviously, the pro day of Jaden Daniels is tomorrow, so we'll have a lot to react to. In addition to probably, hopefully getting some of that Orlando footage, and we'll be able to comb over some of that and talk about that stuff. So I think we'll have a lot to discuss tomorrow in any event. David Brown, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy David writes, blessing to you and yours, Louie. Likewise, David. Blessing to you and yours as well. Really, truly appreciate you. Likewise. Likewise. So you guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. If you're on the East Coast, get some sleep, get some rest. You're on the left coast, enjoy the rest of your evening. And if you're anywhere in between, enjoy the rest of your evening as well. Until tomorrow, I'll have a Louie T Network podcast episode for you tomorrow, in addition to the Command Post. We got some rule changes to talk about. We got other things. Hard Knocks has a new format. So much to get to tomorrow. So I'll see you for the podcast in our normal slot around 4:30-ish. And then I'll see you back here tomorrow night for the Command Post Live. Until then, you guys take care. God bless. See you next time.